Welcome back to Gen Taub Live. We have a huge show today. We are going to talk about some breaking news. We are going to resist the lies. You know that we need to do that every single day of this administration. We are also, of course, going to highlight our person of the day, and it's someone you don't expect. Right? I'm not going to recycle the same thing that you see time and time again. We are going to have a very special person of the day. And of course, Crazy Town. I can't wait for that. But before we launch into our big news, I want to let you know about a new feature that we need now more than ever. And that is what I'm going to loosely call what to expect when you are expecting the apocalypse. And let me tell you, friends, the purpose of this is there's a lot of bad stuff happening, but I'm not feeling, in my observation of mainstream news, regardless of its political perspective, that I'm not seeing any kind of real analysis of what really matters here and what in fact will be an incredible tool for us to use when we take back the White House and the Congress. So I'm going to make sure that what to expect when you're expecting the apocalypse is also turned back on us for what we should expect when we expect liberation. Okay, folks, let's flippin' go. Now, the big news of the day is, of course, breaking law. Donald Scribbleface Trump and his mendacious, malevolent, moronic minions are at it again. This is all they know how to do, which is break the law. Now, the question, though, my friends, is what is he doing right now that is actually breaking the law that I expect courts to push back on? And what is he doing right now that he is going to win in court? And I don't want you freaking the F out about. Okay, so what we need to start with is the breaking news of today. We are expecting the very first showdown at the U.S. Supreme Court under Trump 2.0. And you may have heard about this last night, maybe about 12 hours ago, when news organizations got information that Donald Trump had asked the Supreme Court for an emergency hearing regarding one particular of his firings. Let me say this in a way that is actually a little more articulate. Doge, which isn't a real department, and Elon Musk and Donald Trump are like wreaking havoc and just firing people right and left. But there is one person who is the feature of a Supreme Court appeal at this moment. Now, there are a lot of lawsuits where folks are saying I did not deserve to be fired. But I am talking about a specific person here. And you may probably have not heard his name, but here he is. Let me blow this up for you. His name is Hampton Dellinger. There he is, Mr. Hampton Dellinger, back in 2021 when he was going through his Senate confirmation hearing to be head of what is a somewhat obscure agency called the Office of Special Counsel. Now, this isn't part of the Department of Justice. Sometimes things have more than one name. And in this instance, Donald Trump, kind of as part of his firing blitz, gave notice fired Hampton Dellinger. He was head of this Office of Special Counsel. Now, this is an independent, so-called independent federal agency, not part of the Justice Department. And its job is to protect whistleblowers. who blow the whistle on government fraud, corruption, and abuse, which is actually a very important thing, because inside of any organization where there is power, there can be corruption and so on. I think we see that quite clearly, and I don't need to explain that further to you. But what makes Hampton Dillinger special is that his case is going up to the United States Supreme Court, because he is challenging the ability essentially under the Constitution and under the statute under which he was appointed, for Donald Trump to fire him without giving any kind of reason. Well, I shouldn't say any kind of reason whatsoever, but he wasn't given a reason at all. Now, the deal is, just to let you know, like, spoiler alert, I believe Donald Trump is going to win this one. And it is not the end of the world. In fact, it's actually, I believe, a good thing. And I'll explain in a moment. But let me tell you what this case, like, what happened here. So Dillinger gets fired, right? And he decides to go to court to sue, to say, hold on, you didn't have the right to fire me. Now, Dillinger, what I was showing you, his confirmation hearing from 2021 happened to be when he was put into a different job. He had a different position under Joe Biden at the time. Now, he was recently confirmed by the Senate this year for this new job that I'm talking to you about, which is the Office of Special Counsel. Now, what happened is he got fired on February 7th, right? So that was a week ago Friday, a week before Valentine's Day, and it was a one-sentence email. And they did not give any kind of reason for terminating him. Okay, so far, not at all surprising given the track record of this, President Scribbleface and his puppet master, his dual puppet masters, Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin. Okay, so this guy Dillinger, right, he gets fired, and so he sues. And he filed a lawsuit in Washington, D.C., and the judge, Judge Amy Berman Jackson, the federal judge, said, hold on. She put what's called a temporary restraining order in place, saying that, look, I don't know whether Donald Trump, I'm paraphrasing, right? So this judge is like, hold on, temporary restraining order. Let's preserve the status quo. Let Mr. Dillinger go to work so that we can at least hear his case. Jackson was, Amy Berman Jackson was pretty clear that this was not a decision on the merits, but she just wanted 2 weeks so that Dillinger could kind of present his case. And it would be, temporary restraining orders, we've talked about them before. They're temporary. And then there would be a hearing. And after the hearing, there could be something called a preliminary injunction, which would basically say, okay, either Dillinger would win, and the court would say until there's a full-on trial, he gets his job, or the judge would look at it and say, no, you're not, the likelihood is you're going to fail, so we are going to let them fire you, and you'll have to deal with it, as part of the litigation, back pay or whatever whatever it would be. Okay, so that was put in place. Well, of course, Donald Trump, his administration did not like that. And the thing is, generally speaking, a temporary restraining order cannot be appealed. Okay, but it was, nevertheless, the Trump administration went above the trial court's level to a DC Circuit Court panel. And what they said, what Donald Trump wanted is for a court above Amy Berman Jackson to say just to stop her restraining order, right? So she said, he gets fired. Judge says, hold the phone for 2 weeks. We need to find out if it's legal to fire this guy, Hampton Dillinger. Donald Trump goes to above her head and says, I want you to put her order on hold, right? What did that mean? That would mean Hampton would have to stay home, not go to work. Well, the DC Circuit said, no, we're standing by. The 3-judge panel said, no, we're going to stand by the trial judge. Well, of course, Donald Trump hated that. This goes down over the weekend. And last night, went up to the United States Supreme Court asking for an emergency appeal because the status right now, what's happening is Hampton Dillinger still has his job. Okay, so that's what's happening. Okay, so I'm just giving you the procedure. Now, here's why Donald Trump is probably going to win and why you don't need to freak out about this. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And when I say he's going to win, I don't know if he's going to win on this very narrow procedural question of whether the district court judge gets to have her restraining order. But what I'm telling you is he's going to win the question of whether he is entitled to fire without any reason at all the heads of independent agencies. Now, I could be wrong, but given this court, again, and given my understanding of the law here, regardless of whether I agree with it, I believe he will win. And I believe, this guy, Hampton Dillinger, and anyone else who is head of a so-called independent agency can get the hook. Okay, so let me just tell you why, because I know this is kind of what you're here for, the explanation of the why, and then why it might not be the end of the world. Okay, so the reason why is it's a tension between a recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court saying that a president of the United States can fire the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. There was a case recently, and the language in the statute about protecting the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is literally verbatim the same language in the statute that was designed to protect the person in the person in Hampton Dillinger's role. Bottom line is the Supreme Court said, I'm looking at this language and I think a president can fire the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I think that can happen. You might have remembered that showdown at the beginning of the Trump administration when Mick Mulvaney had two jobs. One, they pushed out the old head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, put Mick Mulvaney in it. He also had some other job. I think it was head of OMB. And to try to curry favor with the staff, he brought a bunch of Dunkin' Donuts into the office, whereas the old head of the CFPB refused to stay home. Okay, well, at the end of the day, Donald Trump was able to fire the head of the CFPB. And in that instance, the language in the statute, basically, the court said, we're going to forget. We are going to ignore the language. So the language in the statute that was ignored by the Supreme Court regarding the Consumer Bureau said that the Consumer Bureau head could only be fired for, and I'm quoting, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Well, in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court struck that down. This was in 2020, 5 years ago. Struck it down, saying it violated the separation of powers, and the president can remove the Consumer Bureau's director for any reason. Okay, so this is critical. Now, in addition, we already know the majority already held the president to be extremely immune, even from criminal action. So there's no reason why, I believe, that he wouldn't be able to fire the head of this other agency. Now, the only thread, you might say, well, why is this even a case? Why does Hampton Dillinger think he even has a case? Well, the reason why, and this is the last piece of the weeds, is there's actually a case, a very, very old decision called Humphrey's Executor. And this case, this is a case that goes way back in Supreme Court history. And in that decision, the court had decided, this goes back to 1935, the court had made this decision regarding the power of a president to fire agency heads, whatever. But the bottom line is there's nothing really left of that decision. So what I would expect is whether immediately or eventually, and by eventually I mean in the short term, Donald Trump will get his wish and he'll be able to fire this agency head. Okay, why is this not a big flippin' deal? It's actually good for us. Because if you believe, like I believe, that we are going to get a sane, democratic administration who wants to follow the law back in the White House, job number one is going to be denazification and de-Dogefication and de-Trumpification of all the agencies. And I'm effing glad that a rationally sane president can get rid of them, one, legally, and two, I'm really sick of people who are talking heads on TV who aren't even lawyers, and then many of the lawyers like Merrick Garland who are like norms, and didn't get rid of people at the Department of Justice or FBI who needed to be pushed out, didn't bring cases when they needed to. What this decision will do by the U.S. Supreme Court is say, when normal people who want to follow the law, when people who aren't puppets for ketamine addicted kleptocrats, when they get into office, they can fire all the bad people simply with a one-sentence email. And you know what? We are going to need that. So yes, this will be a good decision. Now, it's all not Pollyanna news here, my friends. We got to talk about another piece of breaking news, and then we will deal with fighting the lie. The latest news that I'm concerned about from yesterday is that Doge, this fake agency run by a billionaire trying to and successfully stealing from all of us, is trying to get access to our records at the IRS. And there's only a couple reasons why they want to do that, I think. And it goes back to Nixon, right? It has to do with the enemies list. They want to audit and try to tie up with the IRS and threaten people who are the enemies of the state. That's my best guess. Also, as you may remember, Donald Trump himself feels persecuted because he cheated on his taxes for so many years and, supposedly, and was always under audit. And he believes everyone else should be. So, there's that. However, I think this will get stopped in court. So keep your eyes on that. Now, I am not going to run down every piece of litigation that is ongoing every day. But you may have a desire to say, wait, what happened to that other case, like the birthright citizenship case, which I know the Supreme Court will reject Donald Trump's attempt to, without a constitutional amendment, get rid of it. But you may want to say, what's going on with that? And so I have the perfect resource for you. This is a screenshot from Just Security. Just Security has what's called a litigation tracker, legal challenges to Trump administration actions. It was first published on January 29th, and it was last updated February 16th. And if you Google litigation tracker, legal challenges to Trump administration actions, or you just Google Just Security and litigation tracker, you can bookmark that and have it for yourself. And I'm going to ask, if one of the mods might be able to find that and put it in the chat. Thank you, Deb, Jason, and Susan. I miss you guys. Okay, so that is what you can do. Again, I'm not going to follow every single legal story, but I'm always going to let you know, calm the F down. This could be good. And also, hey, this is bad. And this is fresh. Now, what a shit show, right? I keep talking about how this is an administration run by mendacious, malevolent, moronic minions, but it is also the, sort of wet dream of a never grow up man who is addicted to ketamine and who is a fascist who is pulling the strings, right? AKA Elon Musk. So what is happening is really stupid stuff, which I think we need to elevate. So folks, actually, when we get closer to things like the flippin' midterms in less than 2 years, we could do something to save this country, which is get rid of if the Democrats took over the House again, if we could take control of the Senate, or at least close the gap in terms of the Republican majority, we could do a hell of a lot to stop this ongoing catastrophe. Okay, so what am I talking about? I think you heard about this. So because they don't know what they're fucking doing, right? We have a situation where the Doge people just willy-nilly fired a bunch of people. They're like, oh, what is the National Nuclear Security Administration? If they even saw it, they probably used AI and just said, we're just going to fire people. And I think they were firing anyone who might have been hired within a recent period, or however the fuck they did it. They fired people who are in charge of keeping track of our nuclear weapons stockpile, friends. Nuclear weapons stockpile. If government has the top job is to keep us safe, firing the people in charge of our nuclear stockpile is the opposite of that. And if I'm talking to you like you are in kindergarten, it's because I am channeling what I would say to the flippin' idiots who did this. And now they're trying to hire them back, but they don't know who the hell they are or how to do it. If this isn't the utmost incompetency, I don't know what is. And again, not happy about it, just reporting it. This is what we are dealing with. And I wish there was more emphasis on the danger they are creating for us. Yes, the price of eggs is going up, but I don't know if that is going to successfully capture the imagination of many Americans. I think losing your job, having tariffs increase the price of all groceries, and being worried that these fucking morons are going to blow up the whole country might get people's attention. I think so. Now, I'm not actually worried about that now because I think they're going to get that together, but who knows? With Pete Hegseth in charge, apparently, drinking bourbon, or maybe it was just some Coke or some water, the way he was sipping it, who knows? I don't have a lot of confidence in people like him, but, let's hope that someone gets their act together there. Now, let's, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. Let's talk about resisting the lies. But before I get to that, let's do that first. Let's talk about resisting the lies. This is a motto of our show. The simple step of a courageous individual is not to take part in the lie. And I realize that's kind of a negative. Don't take part in the lie. So not taking part in the lie means exposing lies. It means exposing lies and protesting lies. So let's start with a protest. I think you may know that today is President's Day. And across the country, apparently, it's not always at noon, but in every single state, at the state capitol, and sometimes in other parts of the state, like cities, big cities, there are going to be protests. And there's an organization loosely formed, I think, on Reddit that now has a website, and it's called 5051. 50 states, 50 protests, and one movement, or 50 protests, 50 states, and one movement. You can go to their website and you can find out what's going on in your state. I hope I have an opportunity to do that right here in Michigan. I know I won't be going to Lansing, but down in Detroit, right at the river where the Joe Louis Fist sculpture is, apparently there is a rally or a protest between 6 and 8 p.m. tonight. So again, you can go to this website and find this. Again, it's kind of hard sometimes to find these links, but I did go over to Blue Sky and I have shared this, and I will try to also share this after the show in the comments. Now, how do we not take part in the lie? Okay. One way to not take part in the lie is to call it out. And one of the biggest lies I saw recently over the weekend came from Marco Rubio. So, there's this huge problem, not just with Elon Musk, but now with Vice President J.D. Vance, meeting with the AfD, which is the alternative party in Germany. The D is for Deutschland, I believe. And these are the folks that have the Nazi party legacy. And they're trying to deny that this is a problem, just like they're trying to pretend the Hitler salute was not actually performed twice by Elon Musk. So I want to play for you a journalist calling out Marco Rubio, and I am going to respond. The key thing to listen for here is Rubio claiming that we're all fine, everything's fine, because, you know, in Nazi Germany, there was no opposition party. There was no one opposing it. That is not true. So I want to play this for you and just keep in mind what he's saying is not true. And what have we come to when instead of condemning fascist ideology, the response from the Republicans is, well, you know, we have free speech here, so you can stop it. Let me play this for you.
Withering criticism on many occasions from many leaders in Europe, and we don't go around throwing temper tantrums about it.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Okay. No. Let me tell you, Marco Rubio, Sophie Scholl would like a word. Sophie Scholl, you may know, my friends, who Sophie Scholl is, or maybe you don't. But Sophie Scholl, and I'm going to now share a screen with you for just this moment. And let's do this. Okay. Here is Sophie Scholl. Sophie Scholl was a leader, young girl, leader of the White Rose movement. It was a youth movement that resisted the Nazi regime. And she was a resistance fighter, and she tried to, she and her brothers and others, I'm going to show you, put out pamphlets, and they were arrested, and they had a sort of show trial, and they were executed. But here's what one of the pamphlets said. Our current state is a dictatorship of evil. We know that already. I hear you object, and we don't need you to reproach us for it yet again. But I ask you, if you know then, why don't you act? Why do you tolerate these rulers gradually robbing you in public and in private of one right after another, until one day nothing, absolutely nothing, remains but the machinery of the state under the command of criminals and drunkards? How dare you, Marco Rubio, suggest that there was not an opposition? Now, this White Rose movement gained traction early on. She was in 1943 and her brother arrested by the Gestapo. And as I noted, she was executed by guillotine in February of 1943. They asked her at trial when she was sentenced to death if she wanted to say something. And she said, I am now, as before, of the opinion that I did the best that I could do for my nation. I therefore do not regret my conduct and will bear the consequences that may result from my conduct. So, yeah. Now, it's not just Sophie Scholl and the many people in the resistance to the Nazis, by the way. I think there are many others, but even if Marco Rubio is an idiot who doesn't know history, surely he is aware of the film Casablanca, which is a perennial classic. And he must know about Victor Laszlo. And by the way, Casablanca came out in 1943. And there is Victor Laszlo, part of the underground, looking into the gorgeous eyes of Ingmar. I'm sorry, I'm calling her Ingmar Bergman, but it's, oh my gosh. Ingmar Bergman is a filmmaker. And Ingrid Bergman is the gorgeous actress. And Victor Laszlo worked in the underground. And the deal is, Victor Laszlo, who was a film character, not a real person, he represented in a Hollywood film, right? In a Hollywood film, the underground, right? The opposition. And it is astonishing to me that he wouldn't know that. And so I'm pulling up for you just a few famous things that Victor Laszlo said. And, he basically said, I'm not going to give up the people, my compatriots who are part of the underground. I didn't do it in Germany. And why would I do it for you? I just, he is an imagining character, but he said, in the face of tyranny, courage is our greatest weapon. Now, I don't know, but I want to really push back on this idea that simply because there's a Democratic Party or an opposition that fascism cannot take hold in our society. Now, before we get to Crazy Town, I've got two things. I've got something from Tim Kaine, cutting down Doge, and then I also have as I said, our person. I also have something kind of crazy, but not for Crazy Town, about what's going on with Vladimir Putin. So let's play for you Tim Kaine.
Versus outrage about some of the stuff that they're uncovering.
Yeah, I think my outrage is about who they're hurting. I don't care about the bromance. That who cares about the bromance? I don't like letting unelected officials, post. Yesterday, the Doge guys post classified information on their website, and they had to realize, we didn't realize that agency was a classified agency. You shouldn't let people run rampage through offices that have classified information. And again, I view this in Virginia from the perspective of we're a veteran-heavy state. There's a war on veterans. When they're slashing in the VA, and when 30% of the federal workforce is veterans, compared to like 2 to 3% of the civilian workforce, you do indiscriminate cuts. I'll tell you who it hurts. It hurts veterans.
Do you take any...
Good. Now, one thing I got to tell you, I know it's sort of running rampant on Blue Sky and everywhere. Lots of people seem to be blaming Democrats for not doing enough. You know what? What can they do? They can speak out. They can do these symbolic gestures of holding the floor of the Senate. They should vote against all of Donald Trump's nominees. I know that. But right now, it really is on us to protest or to wait, to organize, and to make sure that these folks don't stay in office. And I wish that there were some magic wand that they could wave, but the levers of power are what they are. And so, showing up, making the phone calls, staying energized and not afraid in the face of this creeping authoritarianism is important. But plus, remembering that not every win for Donald Trump is a loss for us in the future, as we started out. Now, here is something, again, that should be part of Crazy Town, but it's not. And this is Dan Crenshaw in the most idiotic moment suggesting that Donald Trump isn't appeasing Vladimir Putin by handing Ukraine to him to end the war. Now, we don't know exactly what is going to happen, but we do know that Ukraine wasn't included in what are going to be the discussions that are happening right now over the next couple of days. Supposedly, they'll be included at some point. Let's listen to this. Bookmark this one, because this isn't going to hold up well.
Flattering people in order to get them to the table. That is what we need. Whether we like it or not, that's what we need.
But flattering a very brutal dictator who's pretty cunning, frankly, you really think that's a winning strategy?
Well, he's not that cunning. He's fought a war that has destroyed his society, killed hundreds of thousands of Russians. He's made a massive mistake and miscalculation. He's not as clever as maybe we've given him credit for. I think let Trump do his campaign promise and play this out. Look, nobody's going to take advantage of Donald Trump. And General Kellogg made that very clear, because that was a question Europeans asked him. Are you going to sell out just to get a deal, because of the campaign promise? And Kellogg just laughed at that. He's like, there is no way, there is absolutely no way that Donald Trump will be seen, and he will not let himself go down in history as having sold out to Putin. He will not let that happen.
He doesn't control what people say about him during his life or after he is gone. And we shall see. What he does and not how he tries to control the message will dictate that. Now, I have got, right before Crazy Town, my person of the day. And I like lawyers as much as the next person, and I have read those fabulous resignation letters. But resignation letters aren't poetry. And what we need now more than ever is a lens that expands beyond our particular moment in history to universal themes, to the possibility of joy and contradiction in the face of all the madness and possibility in the world. So my person of the day is none other than American poet Walt Whitman. And the deal is, when I was choosing a photo to share with you of Walt Whitman, I thought, whenever you see Walt Whitman, you see this old grizzled guy. And hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with being an old grizzled guy. We all get there one day. I mean, yeah, old grizzled gal is what I'll be. But he was young once. And I wanted to share with you the image from the book plate of his work of poetry, Leaves of Grass, because I think it's important to recognize who was behind the voice at the time that his words were being published, at the time he was writing his poetry. So here is a great picture of, let me blow this up, of Walt Whitman. Look at him with that sort of saucy, lean, head tilted, quite a cute guy. Anyway, so this is, though, the reason why Walt Whitman is my choice right now is, oops, sorry guys, I just messed that up. Here is Walt Whitman, right? And so what I want to, let me back up so I can actually share this with you. What you're seeing here is him at age 35. And this was from a steel engraving by an artist named Samuel Hollier. And it was from a lost daguerreotype by Gabriel Harrison. So daguerreotype would be an old school photo. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'll correct it in the chat. And then someone decided to use that to make a steel engraving. And this portrait of Whitman was the frontispiece at the beginning of the first edition of Leaves of Grass, according to Wikimedia Commons. And that was 1885. Now, what I want to share with you then is an excerpt from one of my favorite poems, Song of Myself. And I was just going to give you the stanza that is oft repeated. Just one stanza, but I'm going to give you this section 51 of the poem. And it says, if you will, the past, let me just be clear. What I love about this is Whitman here is speaking to us, the reader, as if the book is in our hands and we are looking down and he is speaking up to us. Let me begin. The past and present wilt, I have filled them, emptied them, and proceed to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, what have you to confide to me? Look in my face when I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly, no one hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. I concentrate toward them that are nigh, I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work? Who will soonest be through with his supper? Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? Fantastic. Now, this line, do I contradict myself? Well, I do, right? I am large, I contain multitudes. This is something that many of us joke about when we say, yeah, I'm filled with contradictions. And I was thinking about this poem yesterday, and I want you to think about it as part of our prism, our physical, relational, intellectual, spiritual, and mental health. That, yes, things around us are dire, and at the same time, there is joy. How do we embrace that? For me, it's not a practice. It's kind of the way that I am built. And here's what I put up as a photo, because I want to show you how I contradict myself. And these are the two books I am reading right now. Not books, two pieces of authorship. One is a magazine, the other is a book. Okay, so I've collected, and I've yet to read, but it's on the top of my list, the special Time Magazine 50th anniversary edition about Hello Kitty and the power of cuteness. But what I'm also reading is a really gripping book by a man who survived Nazi Germany, Ernst Frankl, called The Dual State, a contribution to the theory of dictatorship. Now, I don't want to talk about Hello Kitty. She is what she is. But this book, I encourage you to consider it. I learned about it first when I wrote a book review for the Washington Post of the book Kleptopia by Tom Burgess. And Victor, keep saying this name, Ernst Frankl's theory is, when he talks about the dual state, he talks about there being a normative state, meaning, the state like the government, the normative state and the prerogative state. And the normative state is the world in which we have to follow the laws, where order must be kept, where property rights and so on are followed. And then there's the prerogative state, where the dictators and authoritarians do whatever they want. So I'm reading this now to better understand the context in which we are living. And as for Hello Kitty, she's cute. Do I contradict myself? I contain multitudes. And now, on that note, let us do our crazy town. Okay, crazy town today is the idiot Tom Homan, who is like, is he the czar of Homeland Security? Who knows what his title is? You got to hear this. It's absolutely nuts. I'll talk to you about it on the other side. It's all for you to think about. You don't need much interpretation.
Where is that line that they cross? So maybe AOC is going to be in trouble now.
Are you suggesting that she should be prosecuted?
I'm suggesting, and I'd ask the Department of Justice, where's that line on impediment, right? It's a broad statute. So I know impeding is someone stopping in front of me and putting their hands on my chest, so you're not coming in here and arrest that guy. That's clearly impeding. But at where's the line on impeding? So I'm asking the Department of Justice, who are the prosecutors, and decide who they prosecute and what the standards of that prosecution is. I simply says, at what point is that impeding? Because you can call it know your rights all you want. We all know what the bottom line is. The bottom line is how they invade law enforcement. Don't open your door. Don't answer questions. Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about people here in the country legally with a criminal conviction who had due process at great taxpayer expense and were ordered deported by a federal judge, but became a fugitive. And we're talking about don't open your door to ICE. You know, you don't have to answer questions. I think it's more about.
So now know your rights. Telling people their rights is now going to be illegal? Oh my God, that is so funny. People need to know their rights, not just months in advance, but they need to know their rights right when it matters. What a joke. And with that, my friends, welcome back. I will see you tomorrow. And it's Crazy Town all the time.